They brought the scholarship kid back to the 20-year reunion, expecting the same quiet boy who used to eat subsidized lunch alone in the corner of Millbrook Academy's cafeteria. What they got instead was the man who had designed the building they were standing in. But before any of that, before the silence that fell over the reunion hall like a held breath, before Brett Langford's carefully rehearsed speech crumbled to nothing in his hands, before the moment that Cedar Falls would talk about for the next 20 years, there was a pen. A blue ballpoint pen, the kind that comes in packs of 12 and goes missing one at a time, and it belonged to Harper Novak. Harper had a system. She kept the pen tucked behind her ear or threaded through the bun at the back of her head. This system worked approximately 40% of the time. The other 60%, the pen launched itself, mid-conversation, mid-sentence, mid-important moment, into the general vicinity of whatever situation could benefit most from additional embarrassment. She had been working at Paxton's Books and Brew for 3 years. The bookshop café sat at the corner of Main and Elm, wedged between a dry cleaner and a pharmacy, smelling permanently of roasted coffee beans and old paperback glue. Harper was 29 years old and had the coordination of someone who had recently learned to inhabit a body and was still working out the terms. "Come on," she muttered that Thursday afternoon, standing in front of the ancient espresso machine that sat on the counter like a retired general. "We have been through this. You work. I press the button. Coffee comes out. That is the deal." The machine released a single dispirited hiss. "That is not coffee." Another hiss. "I am not accepting a hiss as a substitute for a latte." The machine went silent. Harper pressed the button again. A thin stream of coffee appeared reluctantly, like it was doing her a favor. "Thank you," she said seriously. "I know it was hard. I respect the effort." Diane, the shop's owner, emerged from the back with a box of book returns. She was 62 years old, had a gray braid that reached her waist, and had stopped being surprised by Harper's conversations with machinery approximately 2 years and 11 months ago. "Machine giving you trouble again?" "We reached an agreement," Harper said, straightening her apron. "It's a process." The bell above the door rang. The man who walked in was tall in the way that made people instinctively check if the ceiling was high enough. Dark jacket, worn at the elbows the way expensive clothes get when someone actually uses them. He had the kind of face that looked like it was always doing math. Focused, slightly distant, working through something invisible. He scanned the cafe once, chose the table in the far corner with his back to the wall, and sat down without looking at the menu. Harper pulled her order pad from her apron pocket. Her pen, predictably, launched itself off the back of her head and arced through the air with quiet elegance before landing in the ceramic mug on his table. She stopped. The man looked at the pen, looked at her, said nothing. Harper walked over, retrieved the pen from the mug with as much dignity as the situation allowed, and set her pad on the table. "Hi. Welcome to Paxton's. I'm so sorry about the pen. It does that." "Does it do it often?" "More than I'd like, less than you'd think. It's complicated." She clicked the pen twice. "What can I get you?" "Black coffee." "Just that?" "Just that." She wrote it down, returned to the counter, poured the coffee from the pot already brewed, not from the machine which had given enough for one afternoon, and carried it back without incident. Mostly. She misjudged the corner of the table and the cup rattled in the saucer, coffee sloshing close to the rim, and she held her breath until it settled. "I had it under control," she told the cup. The man looked at her with one eyebrow raised, not unkind, curious. "You talk to things," he said. "I talk to things that deserve a talking to." Harper set the coffee down properly. "The espresso machine has been uncooperative since Tuesday." "And the cup?" The cup was getting ideas. He almost smiled. It was the almost that made her look twice. The way it reached the corner of his mouth and then pulled back, like something inside him hadn't decided yet whether smiling in this town was still allowed. "Sawyer Dane," he said, and extended his hand. "Harper Novak." She shook it. "You're not from here." "I was." He looked out the window at the street. Cedar Falls in October, maple trees burning orange, the old courthouse at the end of the block, the hardware store that had been there since her grandmother was born, a long time ago. He didn't say anything else. Harper didn't push. Some silences were questions, some were full stops. His was the second kind. She went back to work. He stayed for 2 hours, drinking 1 cup of coffee and looking out the window like the street owed him something. He came back the next day and the day after that. By the fourth visit, Diane had started calling him the window man, and Harper had stopped pretending she didn't notice when the bell rang. He always ordered the same thing. He always sat in the same corner. He always had a pencil in his hand by the second cup, not writing exactly, just turning it between his fingers the way some people crack knuckles. On the third day, she noticed he was sketching the street on his paper placemat, clean, precise lines. A fire hydrant rendered with more care than it had ever received in its operational life. On the fifth day, she brought him a second cup he hadn't asked for and set it down and said, "In case the first one gets lonely." He looked up. This time the smile stayed. "Does that happen to cups?" "Frequently, especially in this shop." She glanced at the windows. "Are you staying in Cedar Falls long?" "A while," he said, which was not an answer, but he said it in a way that felt more honest than a number. She let it go. But she thought about it later, wiping down tables after close, the way you think about a sentence that doesn't quite finish. Brett Langford arrived on a Thursday with 2 men behind him. Cody, who recorded everything on his phone and was always a beat behind the correct emotional reaction, and Mitch, who wore the permanent expression of someone who'd just been told the punchline was coming. Brett himself was the kind of man who entered rooms expecting applause. He wore a blazer that was slightly too shiny and a watch that was definitely not real gold and cologne that arrived 3 seconds before he did. "Heard this place has good coffee," he announced. "We do," Harper said. "Can I get you something?" "In a minute." Brett was already scanning the room. His gaze landed on Sawyer's corner and parked there. "Hey, big guy, do I know you?" Sawyer looked up. His face did not change. "I don't think so." "You look real familiar." Brett squinted. "You from around here?" "Passing through." "Huh." Brett kept looking with the screwed-up expression of someone doing arithmetic they can't quite finish. "Anyway, we're doing the Millbrook Academy reunion. 20 years, class of 2005. It's going to be an event." He spread his hands like he was announcing a stadium sellout. "Historic night." "I'm sure," Harper said. 3 coffees?" Cody raised a finger. "Can mine be an oat milk latte?" "Black coffees," Brett said over him. 3. Cody lowered his finger. Mitch nodded 4 seconds later. Harper delivered the coffees and caught the word scholarship from Cody before Brett cut him off with a sharp look. She filed it without reacting and went back to the counter. Behind her, she heard Brett telling someone on his phone that everything was set and the surprise was going to be something people talked about for years. She heard him say the word unforgettable twice. Neither time did it sound like a compliment. She looked at Sawyer. He was looking out the window. His jaw had tightened just barely, just enough. That evening, after closing, Sawyer was still at his table. Harper had stopped asking him to leave at closing time 3 days ago. The arrangement had arrived without being discussed, the way good arrangements usually do. She made herself a cup of tea, from the kettle, not the machine. The machine had earned its rest, and sat across from him with her legs folded under her in the chair. "You went to Millbrook Academy," she said, not a question. He looked at her for a moment. Then he said, "I graduated from Millbrook in 2005, on a scholarship." He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "Brett Langford was in my class. He thought the scholarship was funny, that I was the funny part of it." He paused. "At graduation he organized something. Had someone pull my application letter up on the auditorium screen. The letter where I explained why I needed the scholarship." Harper waited. "I had written about my father," Sawyer said, "about how he worked nights at the plant and days at the grocery store, and we still came up short every month. I wrote it honestly because I believed honesty was a kind of currency." He was quiet for a moment. Brett read it out loud while the whole class laughed. "I stood on that stage and I didn't run. I don't know why, I just stood there." His jaw tightened slightly. "My family moved 2 weeks later. I didn't come back." "Until now," Harper said. "Until now. Why?" He looked at her, and there was something in his face she hadn't seen before. Not exactly pain, but the particular weariness of someone who has been carrying a suitcase for 20 years and is finally setting it down. "Because I got tired of letting that place be the last word on who I am." Harper looked at her tea. She thought about the letter. A 17-year-old kid writing about his father's 2 jobs, choosing honesty because it was the only currency he had, and a room full of people who made a joke of it. "Are you going to the reunion?" she asked. "Yes." She looked up. "Then I'm going too." "Harper." "Non-negotiable." She stood. "I'll stay out of the way. But you're not walking in there alone." She reached for her apron on the counter hook. Her pen, which she had set on the edge, fell off the counter and rolled in a slow, deliberate arc across the floor before stopping at his shoe. They both looked at it. "Your pen has strong opinions," he said. "We have an ongoing disagreement," she said. He picked it up and held it out. Their fingers overlapped for a second at the handoff, and neither of them moved for a moment before she took it and tucked it back into her bun. She noticed, as she turned to go, the sketch on his placemat, the bookshop, the bay windows, the proportions of the old facade, the detail of the little metal owl Diane had mounted above the door 17 years ago and never taken down. It was beautiful in the way things are beautiful when someone looked at them very carefully before drawing them. She said nothing, but she looked at it for too long. 3 days later, a woman named Mrs. Rosecroft, retired schoolteacher, in every Friday for chamomile and the new arrivals shelf, set a magazine on the counter while she sorted her purse for exact change. Harper glanced at it. Architectural Review, and on the cover, beside a photograph of the Millbrook County River Walk, the renovation that had transformed the entire downtown corridor, the one everyone in Cedar Falls had celebrated as the beginning of the town finally coming back to itself, was Sawyer's face. Sawyer Dane, principal architect, Dane & Associates, the visionary behind 14 of the region's most celebrated public spaces, including the Cedar Falls Public Library, the River Walk Pavilion, and Millbrook County Events Center. Harper looked at the magazine. She looked at the door. She looked at the magazine again. "Mrs. Rosecroft," she said carefully, "is this yours?" "Found it on the reading table. Someone left it." The woman pressed her coins into Harper's palm. "Isn't he something? Grew up right here, they say. Changed his whole life around." She tucked her tea under her arm and headed for the door. "Some people just need the right distance to become who they were always supposed to be." Harper stood at the counter for a long moment. Then she looked at the espresso machine. "I know," she said, not a word. She waited until the café was empty, and the chairs were upside down on the tables, and Sawyer came in through the back the way he'd started doing when the evenings got cold, and she set the magazine on the table in front of him without saying anything. He sat down, looked at it, looked at her. "I was going to tell you," he said. "I know," she sat across from him. "Why didn't you?" He chose his words carefully. "Because the moment people find out, it changes the way they're in the room with me. Either they want something, or they get careful, or they stop talking to me like I'm a person in a chair and start talking to me like I'm a situation they have to manage." He held her gaze. "And you talked to me like I was just someone sitting in your bookshop. You argued with the espresso machine in front of me on day one. You told that cup it was getting ideas." He exhaled. "I didn't want to lose that." "Sawyer, I know. I am the same person who watched you sketch the fire hydrant on a placemat for 20 minutes. She pushed the magazine to the side. "That does not change." He looked at her for a long moment. Then the almost smile returned, and this time, completely, it stayed. 2 nights before the reunion, Brett found her outside as she was locking up. She had the unpleasant sensation of a plan arriving in person. "I'll be straight with you," he said. "People who say that rarely are." He smiled with the confidence of someone who considered charm a master key. "Your friend, the tall guy, I finally placed him. Sawyer Dane, we went to school together, him and me." He adjusted his jacket. "I've put together a little segment for the reunion, a tribute, sort of, a where are they now. And honestly, I think it would be better for everyone if Sawyer wasn't there to see it." "Better for him," Harper said, "or better for you?" "Better for the room." Brett held his hands out as if the room were his responsibility. "Some memories are better left alone. He had a hard time here. Bringing it all back up might not be the kindest." "Stop." Harper unlocked the door she had just locked, stepped inside, and looked back at him. "I'll be at the reunion, both of us will." She closed the door. She stood in the dark shop with her back against it and looked at the ceiling. "Universe," she said to the general darkness overhead. "I know this week I lost 2 sets of keys and I spilled an entire French press on myself on Wednesday, and I had that argument with the rolling book cart that I am not proud of, but I need this one to work out. Just this one, please." The shop was quiet. "I'll take that as agreement," she said, and went to find her phone. Sawyer didn't answer. She left a voicemail. She sent 3 texts. She sent a 4th that just said, "Please call me before you go in there." She tried calling again. Voicemail. She drove to the reunion. The Millbrook County Events Center, Sawyer's Event Center, she knew now, the one he had spent 14 months restoring, the one where he had replaced the original crumbling facade with something that felt both new and like it had always been right, was lit warm and gold from inside. Music, voices. The particular cheerfulness of people trying very hard. Harper walked in. Brett was at the front of the room near a podium and a large projection screen. Cody stood beside him with a remote control held in both hands like a sacred object. Mitch was stationed near the refreshments table, which had captivated him entirely. Harper moved toward the back. She tried Sawyer's phone one more time, straight to voicemail. Brett tapped the microphone. All right, everyone, 20 years. Applause. Tonight we're celebrating how far we've come, and some of us more than others. I've put together a little tribute, sort of a special moment for someone who left Cedar Falls a long time ago. He nodded to Cody, who pressed the remote with great ceremony. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. The screen flickered, went half blue, and then a loading bar appeared and froze. Cody pressed all the buttons. Mitch wandered over from the refreshments, a miniature quiche in each hand, and stared at the screen as if proximity might help. It's buffering, Cody whispered. I can see that it's buffering, Brett said. Should I restart it? Don't restart it. I think I should restart it. Cody. And then the door opened. Sawyer Dane walked in. He was wearing a charcoal suit that fit the way suits fit in the photographs in lobbies of very serious firms. He walked with his hands loose at his sides and his shoulders back and his face completely calm, and the room turned toward him the way compass needles find north, all at once without deciding to. Brett went pale. Sawyer walked through the room without hurrying. He nodded to a few faces that recognized him, and several did. She could see it happening in real time, the moment of placement, the slow blink of, oh wait, that's, and he walked until he reached the front, where Brett was standing behind the podium and the screen was still loading, and Cody had given up and Mitch had returned to the quitches. Brett, Sawyer said, perfectly level, it's been a while. Yeah. Brett tried to reassemble his smile. I didn't know you were coming. You sent me an invitation. Sawyer glanced at the frozen screen. What were you planning to show? The room was very quiet. It was just a segment, Brett started. My scholarship application letter. Sawyer said it simply, as information. I heard you'd kept a copy. A murmur moved through the room like a current. I don't know what you think. Brett. Sawyer took one step forward, unhurried. I wrote that letter when I was 17 years old. I wrote about my father, about what he sacrificed, about what it cost our family every single month, about why I needed that scholarship to have a shot at the life I wanted. I wrote it honestly, because I believed that honesty was a currency that paid off eventually. He paused. You read it aloud to the whole class and the room laughed. I remember every word of that night. Every word. He looked at the crowd, at the faces he had known at 18, which now showed the first evidence of time, of choices made, of lives that had gone various directions, and then back to Brett. I am not ashamed of that letter. I am not ashamed of who I was. I am not ashamed of my father. He let that settle. But I notice you have spent 20 years holding on to it. That tells me something. Not about me. Silence, the dense kind. Brett tried, come on, we were just kids. We were, Sawyer agreed. And I moved on. Built a career, built some buildings, the faintest smile, including this one actually. He looked up at the restored barrel vault ceiling, the clean sightlines, the work his firm had spent 14 months on. I hope you enjoy the acoustics. He looked back at Brett one last time and there was no anger in it, just the clear-eyed finality of someone who has set something down and has no intention of picking it back up. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I let this town feel like something that happened to me instead of somewhere I came from. That's done now. He nodded once. Good luck with the reunion. He walked out. Harper was already at the door. She stepped into the cold parking lot and found him standing under one of the lights with his face tipped up toward the sky, exhaling a long, slow breath like he was releasing something that had been held too long. You knew, she said. He lowered his head. I got your voicemails, all 4 of them, including the one about the universe. She covered her face with both hands briefly. I was in a moment, she said. I know. He walked toward her and all the formality of the last 20 minutes was gone and he was just Sawyer again. The man who sat in the corner with both hands around his coffee cup like warmth was something to be deliberate about. I had my phone on silent. I'm sorry. You're okay? More than okay. He stopped in front of her. His expression was different now, lighter, like something structural had been removed and the remaining thing was stronger for it. Harper. Yeah. I'm not passing through. She looked at him. What? I told you I was passing through. I'm not. He exhaled. I've been working on the Cedar Falls Public Library renovation for 8 months. I've been here the whole time, staying out at the inn off Route 9, driving past this town every day. And then I found your bookshop. He held her gaze. And I couldn't stop coming back. Harper was quiet. The parking lot light hummed softly above them. Also, Sawyer said, reaching into the inside pocket of his jacket and producing a small velvet box that was very clearly not something a passing-through person carries. I bought this 3 weeks ago, and I have been trying to find the right moment. And I've accepted that with you, the right moment is whichever moment has the most going wrong around it. Harper's heart did something complicated and structurally questionable. He opened the box. The ring was simple and exactly right. A clean band, a stone that caught the parking lot light and held it without showing off. You talked to my coffee cup the first day, he said. You told the espresso machine you respected its effort. You drove to a reunion you weren't invited to because you were worried about me. You held my hand in a park in October and told me I wasn't alone. He looked at her steadily. I want to be the person you worry about for the rest of my life. I want to sit in your bookshop corner until we both know every crack in that table. I want to hear every argument you have with every uncooperative piece of machinery for however long they last. He took her hand. Harper Novak, will you marry me? She laughed. The real kind, the kind that catches you off guard and doesn't apologize for itself. Then she stopped. You have something, she said slowly. Right there. She pointed at his tooth. He froze. His hand came up to his mouth. I do not. Right on the front. Harper. I'm just saying I see. Are you serious right now? She held it for exactly 3 more seconds, then, no, you're perfect. I'm sorry, I panicked. He stared at her. It's a defense mechanism, she said. Say yes to overwhelming things, create a distraction, regroup. I've done it my whole life. She squeezed his hand. Yes, Sawyer Dane, yes. Whatever comes after this, the doors and the driving and all of it, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger and stood up and kissed her in the cold parking lot. And it tasted like the end of 20 years of running and the beginning of everything that comes after you stop. When they pulled apart, she reached up and checked his teeth anyway. He let her. Clean, she said solemnly. I figured you'd check, he said. She tucked the pen behind her ear and leaned into his side and looked out at Cedar Falls. The maple trees, the courthouse, the street that had kept going about its business for 20 years while this man found his way back to it. The pen stayed perfectly still. The universe, as it turned out, had been paying attention the whole time.